I think New York is distilled, excitement.
No matter what time it is, you always find something to eat.
I think it's the diversity of people from all over.
To be able to meet all these different people and learn from each other and just talking is really great, I think.
Because New York is the best, period, because it's a city that never sleeps.
Mød Palle Bo, en digital nomade på en episk rejse. Han solgte alt, sit hus, sin bil og alle sine møbler, og forlod Danmark med det mål at besøge alle 193 lande i verden, mens han dokumenterer det hele lige her. Dette er Radiovagabond podcast.
Here is a special episode that I chose to call The Humans of New York, the podcast. Well, in fact, it'll be in two parts. The first one today and the second one in a few days. I found 6 random people that all lives here in New York and asked them the same 5 questions. In this episode, you'll get the answer to the first 3. And the first one to answer the first question is Raphael. Remember him from last week's episode, the Colombian that moved here when he was 3? He's the one that said that New York wasn't as great as it used to be.
New York is not the New York that I grew up in. I mean, you would expect it to change, but I feel like New York has lost some of its grit.
But there's still a lot of great things about New York, the city that never sleeps.
Oof, there's so many things. I mean, I think the best part of New York is that, let's say you're hungry, no matter what time it is, you always find something to eat, and you don't have to travel that far to find it. I mean, it might not be the best quality, but you don't have to jump in a car and be like, God, now I have to jump in a car. I have to go, X amount of miles away or kilometers away. No, you just walk a few blocks, a block or two, and you have food. And I think that's, you want a drink? There's always somewhere to go get a drink. There's always a party somewhere. I mean, you may have to know where to go, but there's always something to do.
But no drinking in public.
No drinking in public, unfortunately. Actually, they're becoming more lax with that law now. So, I mean, I don't encourage you to do it, but they're becoming a little bit more lax with that law.
Yeah. That's also one of the good things, a saxophone player in Central Park.
Let's see, what else do I love about New York? The people. People always think that New Yorkers are rude or that they're, callous.
That's the image you have.
No, but it's not like that. It's not. I mean, listen, like I said, I've been here since I was 7 years old. And what it is that New Yorkers, we work on a schedule, So let's say I have to be somewhere at 5 o'clock and I'm 2 blocks away, and it's almost 5 o'clock and somebody stops me for directions. I'm sorry, but I gotta go.
We had an appointment to meet at 3 o'clock, and you sent me a text saying that you would be 5 minutes late. And that's because you're a New Yorker.
Yes.
If I made the same deal with someone in Natchez, Mississippi, I don't think I would have gotten that text. I think people would just think, well, I'll show up when I'll show up.
Yes. People respect each other's times. And when you have somebody that doesn't respect your time, you let it be known.
Yeah.
And I think people misunderstand that as being rude. I'll tell you this, I'm the first one, if I see somebody walking down the street with a map or they're confused as to where they're going, I'm the first one to be like, hey, can I help you out? Are you lost? But if I'm running to an appointment, I'm sorry, but I'm running to an appointment,
But I would imagine that's easy for you to adapt to because you came here so young. But what about your parents coming from Colombia? Was that difficult? Because that must have been very different for them.
Well, I think, interesting enough, so I have 2 older sisters, and the oldest one was actually born here in New York. So my parents lived here for a few years before going back to Colombia.
Okay.
So, it wasn't at least from what I remember, it wasn't too much of a bad transition.
Maybe they think when they went back to Colombia that it was too much mañana.
Yeah. So I don't think for them it was too tough. At least from what I remember,
But I can feel, because I spent a lot of time in the South here in the U.S., and I definitely see, okay, people are moving faster.
Yes.
Not so much here in Central Park. It's nice and relaxed here. It's amazing to have a park like this.
Oh, I'm here all the time with my dogs. It's what's so amazing about it is that you kind of forget that you're in the city. You know, you forget that you're in New York City. You have all these trees. You have a big lake. You know, it's beautiful.
And I can take anything you can throw at me, and nothing can get me down. Life is looking so bright, the sun is up again. I'm feeling like I could fly. No clouds in my way, no. And I'm living the good life. And I'm living the good life now. I'm living the good life, and nothing can get me down, no.
And here is Cecilia. She's a 30-something Danish artist and singer-songwriter that moved here to New York 6 years ago. Here's what she likes about living here in New York.
The fact that there are so many cultures living in the city, and you can walk from one street corner to the next street corner and meet a completely new country will be represented, and a completely new culture. And to be able to meet all these different people and learn from each other and just talking is really great, I think. It's very normal here to talk to people in the street and just engage and learn from each other.
Cecilia introduced me to a friend in the music business when we met at a rooftop party in Brooklyn and started chatting as we were walking the streets of Brooklyn to find a place to get a pizza. His name is Brian.
Brian Backus. I'm an independent producer of music, and that's it. I've been an A&R person over the years and stuff like that.
Okay. He's the guy that, together with Nora Jones herself, made Nora Jones.
Really? You're the guy?
I signed Nora to Blue Note, A&R the first record.
Yeah, and you're on first name basis.
We're on a first name basis. And I produced Gregory Porter's 2 records, Liquid Spirit and Be Good.
Oh, man.
Liquid Spirit got a Grammy.
Wow. So, Brian, what's the best part about living in New York?
I think it's the diversity of people from all over, packed into a pretty small area. The transit, where you can pretty much get everywhere by train. With the diversity is also food, although produce is not necessarily the freshest there. Everybody's getting better with some farm-to-table stuff.
Are the farmers markets coming on here as well?
Yeah, definitely in Brooklyn. But also, a lot of restaurants that are doing farms from upstate and then doing stuff here.
And you said music.
Music. I mean, all kinds of music, especially for jazz. I deal with a lot of jazz. And New York is like the capital of the earth, for that music. But there's music every night somewhere in one of the 5 boroughs, certainly in Manhattan.
And here's Bill. He's a 34-year-old New Yorker that I met one morning when I was taking a walk by the river. It's a little bit windy, and you can hear that in the microphone. He was walking his dogs.
Her kommer der en speciel udgave, som jeg har valgt at kalde The Humans of New York, The Podcast. Rent faktisk har jeg delt den op i 2 halvdele. Den første er her, og den næste kommer om et par dage. Jeg har fundet 6 vidt forskellige personer, som alle sammen bor her i New York, og jeg har stillet dem de samme 5 spørgsmål. I dag får du svar på de første 3. Og den første til at svare på det første spørgsmål er Rafael. Kan du huske ham fra sidste uges episode? Den colombiske fyr, som flyttede hertil, da han var 3. Det er ham, der sagde, at New York ikke er helt så fed, som den har været. Men der er nu stadigvæk ret meget, der er godt ved New York. Byen, der aldrig sover. Og nu vil jeg præsentere Bill. Han er en 34-årig New Yorker, som jeg mødte en morgen, da jeg gik en tur ved floden. Det blæser en lille smule, og det kan du høre i mikrofonen. Han var ude at gå med sine hunde, så jeg stillede ham det samme spørgsmål. Og her er Cecilia igen. Hun er midt i 30'erne. En dansk kunstner, musiker og sanger, som flyttede her til New York for 6 år siden. Her er, hvad hun kan lide ved at bo i New York.
it's really out of control. Those are the bad things.
Cecilie præsenterede mig også for en ven i musikindustrien, da vi mødte hinanden til en rooftop party i Brooklyn. Vi forlod stedet en times tid for at finde en pizza, og da vi gik der i gaderne i Brooklyn, der fik han de samme 5 spørgsmål. Hans navn er Brian.
I grew up in the Lower East Side of Manhattan.
Tell me about that apartment you had.
Well, it was a
Her er svaret på det samme spørgsmål fra en anden fyr i musikindustrien. Han hedder Fran, og jeg satte mig ned med ham i et studie på Manhattan. Uden for Frans studie, der mødte jeg Elias på et gadehjørne på Manhattan. Han fortalte mig, at han var født i den Dominikanske Republik, men har boet her i New York i årevis. Han arbejder med at lave mad, så ikke overraskende, så var hans svar, da jeg spurgte ham, hvad det bedste ved at bo i New York var. Food.
The housing epidemic, where, it just gentrified and
dette er altså mit panel. De 6 Humans of New York. Raphael, Bill, Cecilie, Brian, Fran og Elias. Her kommer det næste spørgsmål til disse 6 personer. Hvad er det værste ved at bo i New York?
Actually, the Lower East Side was actually the first place where it kind of took off next to Brooklyn.
Det tredje spørgsmål, jeg gav til de 6 New Yorkere, var lidt af en udfordring. Jeg sagde til den, hvis nu du var enevældig hersker her i New York og kunne bestemme hvad som helst, hvad vil så være din første lov?
So a lot of people, if you're not doing hardcore clubbing to like a big club and stuff like that, most of the bars
det her er
are
Fran,
on the Lower East Side.
musikproduceren.
So that's one thing. The 50th
Brian
floor,
er enig med
I was
Cecilie.
living on 42nd Street and between 10th and 11th by the Hudson. So that was a whole different type of environment.
Raphael var ham, der nævnte det med Trump, men han har nu lidt mere til for.
Everybody that was in that building, there were stockbrokers and like, like the whole yuppie scene, you know what I mean? This is more the hipster scene.
Og for den sidste til at svare på dette spørgsmål, hvad er det værste ved at bo i New York? Skal vi tilbage til vinden ved floden. Her er det Brian, der har en ret drastisk lov, han gerne vil indføre.
There's a lot of like mom and pop shops over here and stuff like that. But
om et par dage, så får du anden halvdel af The Humans of New York, the podcast. Her vil mit panel tale om, hvad er deres største drømme, og hvis de kunne rejse lige præcis hen, hvor de ville, hvor vil de så tage hen? Og så afslører jeg, hvor jeg rejser hen. Jeg hedder Palle Bo. Vi ses om et par dage.
You know what I mean? It's really, really a big change,
Where were you living on 9/11?
I was living downtown. I was living maybe 30 blocks from Ground Zero.
Were you there on the day?
No, I was actually in college, but my parents were there, and my sister ended up going to the roof, and she filmed the tower actually going down. So I got to see all of that, you know what I mean? I mean, even after
we all got to see all of that.
When I came back from college, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was so much. I mean, I got here a week later. The smoke was still up. You know what I mean? There was so much smog and ashes and stuff like that it was crazy. Never seen nothing like that in my life after. Like, you could smell the damage. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I mean, like, the damage and, like, the souls that, got taken. Like, you understand? Like the gas from the planes, like, the stuff that burned. You know what I mean? And it was a real dark time for New York City. You know what I mean? It was a real... for the city and for the world too, because
we were all holding our breath and thinking, what's gonna happen now?
Yeah, exactly. That was like that was something that was so crazy. I seen them buildings growing up as a little kid, and I was always thinking, like, damn, man, them buildings ever go down, that's a big problem. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Just looking at helicopters and planes, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So
I was here in '93, and I only had one day in New York. So I got into a taxi, and she took us around, and we got to World Trade Center, and I thought, well, we don't have time to go up today. I'll do that the next time. So
yeah, I mean, well, they had a beautiful restaurant. It's called Windows of the World up there. I got to go there, a little bit more when I was over 18 or whatever. And
I'm thinking about going up to the new tower today.
You should.
Here's the answer to the same question from another guy in the music industry. His name is Fran, and we sat down with a cup of coffee in his studio in Manhattan.
Being able to wake up and know that you have everything that you need within a 1-block radius. The bakery is right over there, the grocery store is over here, the bank, the subway entrance frequently. That's something, and you never have to get into a car. I grew up outside of New York, and you always got in a car. Nothing is close by. And I think in America, that's generally true, that everything is about the car.
Yeah, you say if you're an American, you need to have a car, unless you live in New York City.
Unless you live in New York City. Yeah, even other big
and that's
cities.
quite unique, right?
LA is not like that.
No.
There is a public transportation, but it's not as comprehensive or as well run or as used. Here in New York, people don't have a car.
No.
I love the energy, of course. Everybody does. A Thursday night, you walk outside and it's just bustling. Everybody's excited about what they're about to do that night. At 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock or 11 o'clock. It's still just crowds of people with excitement and energy. Yeah.
I've spent a few months in the South, and I can feel the energy level is much higher here. People are walking faster.
Yeah. I think New York is distilled, excitement, and the people who come here and want to stay here tend to be, I think, excellent at what they're doing, because it is competitive. It's hard to make a name for yourself with whatever your job is, and it can be almost any industry, but it's hard. So the people who are living here are kind of intense, and in some cases they're the best of the best. Not always, but there's a fair amount of that. It's not where you go to relax. It's not where you go to let yourself go when you're in your 40s and your 50s and you say, I'm tired. You don't go to New York to do that. You go
to Florida.
You go to Florida. Thank you. Isn't Florida Spanish for I'm going to let myself go?
Outside Fran's studio, I met Elias on a street corner in Manhattan. He told me that he's born in the Dominican Republic, but he's lived here for years. He's a caterer, so not surprising, his answer to what he likes about New York is
the food, the restaurants everywhere.
Well, you're a caterer. You have to say that.
Yeah, no, I'm a real big foodie. I like going to urban space, any places where they have pop-up shops, pop-up restaurants, or they just have good dining here. You know what I mean? I like eating out, going to dinner, and yeah, basically that. The women here.
So, this is my panel, the 6 humans of New York. Raphael, Bill, Cecilia, Brian, Fran, and Elias. This episode is brought to you in part by Hotels25.com. It's a website that helps you find the best prices on hotels and guest houses and hostels around the world. Hotels25.com, best price guaranteed. And my second question to these people was, what's the worst thing about living in New York?
The worst thing about living here.
He's Raphael.
It could be a little tough, if you're, for example, if you're a native New Yorker, and if you happen to be single, and you're kind of over the whole bar scene and club scene, it could be a little tough because most of your friends would be either already married or, in relationships. So I know we have a lot of people, but it could be a little lonely sometimes, New York,
New York can be lonely?
It could be a little lonely.
You heard of Tinder?
Yes, but that's the thing. It's like, yes, okay. It's funny because I was having this conversation with somebody not too long ago. Was that, yeah, I think the apps are all great. You meet people, and yeah, I use them. I think I would say 99% of the single population in New York uses them. But the problem is now that it kind of, once again, that whole grit thing about New York that we were talking about earlier, it takes away of that feeling of going out and not knowing if you're going to meet somebody. Like I remember in my 20s, in my early to mid 20s, I would go out by myself, and I would go out and I would actually have to approach somebody instead of looking for them online, you know, and I think that was something really, really cool, you know. Now,
So you went out on yourself by yourself,
Exactly.
but never home by yourself.
yes, but never home. Exactly, never home by myself. That was, but yeah, I mean, I think New York can be a little lonely sometimes. It could be a little lonely, yeah.
Well, the worst part about living in New York can also be actually one of the best parts about living in New York. The worst part is that whatever mood or energy you bring out in the street, you'll get back tenfold. So if you have a bad day, you better stay inside, otherwise you'll be like slaughtered. Like if you go out with a bad attitude, you'll get so much shit back.
Why?
Because that's like, New York is so dynamic and so full of energy, and we're so many people living in the same place. And if you give a bad eye to somebody, or if you like get annoyed or like agitated, people will pick up and they'll just throw it right back at you.
The worst part about living in New York City is the New York City schemers, thieves, and the people that damage New York City as a city. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because an out-of-towner could come here and get swindled so fast that you'll be leaving in your socks and drawers in a matter of a New York minute. Do you understand what I'm saying? That's the thing that I don't like about New York. New York has so much potential, and to me, like, you know, the politics and stuff like that, you know, I mean, we got flat screen TVs in the train stations, but meanwhile, while you're walking to the train station, you're gonna see 5 homeless people living in cardboard boxes. So that's one thing I don't really like. You know what I'm saying? Stuff like that. You know?
For me, I've been in New York my whole life. It's the change. You know, I go away, I come back, and something's closed, and the gentrification of neighborhoods, the price of real estate going up, and rents where working families can't afford to live here anymore. So those are the things that kind of drug me a little bit.
Yeah. And the fact that we had to pay $12 for a drink in a plastic cup.
Yes. But, you know, that's like normal now.
Yeah.
You know, it used to be like you were shocked when a drink was $10. You know, a drink should be like
Now you
$6
don't
or
even
$7.
think about
A
it.
beer was like $3 or $4. Now forget it.
The cops in New York City, I mean, some of them might as well be, you know, they're like cowboys and Indians. You don't know who you don't know who you're dealing with. You got the good cops, and then you got the bad cops.
Really?
Where I grew up at, I got to see both bad cops and good cops. You understand what I'm saying?
What are the bad cops? What are they doing?
Bad cops, all right, they're the type of cops that they'll set you up. They'll plant drugs on you. If you're, let's just say if you're a known drug dealer or something like that, and they know, if they heard about you or somebody gave you up or something like that, if you ever had a scenario or situation with them, they would plant drugs on you, you know what I'm saying, and send you up the river. You know what I mean? They'll take you, cuff you up, beat the shit out of you in the alley, and leave you right there. There's no justice, you know what I'm saying, with the bad cops. They take the matters into their own hands, and they're like a gang themselves. You know what I mean? They're that's one
But
thing about New York.
please tell me that there are more good cops than bad cops.
Man,
Or it's like
I mean,
50-50.
you see what's happening in the world, so, I mean, you see what cops get away with. If me and you were doing those things, you think we'd get away? I don't think so. So, it's the power of the dollar, and depending on, you know, who you are and what you do. I mean, there's cops that, you know, that live on a basic salary, and they're risking their lives every day to do the right thing.
Yeah.
You know, and they love what they do. So those are the cops that I respect. You know, the fire department, respect. These guys are running into fires. You know what I'm saying? I salute them every time I see a fire truck or anybody that's with the fire department. Utmost respect. You know what I mean?
I think with the rent, so they just assholes. They charge a little too much in certain places.
That seems to be the common answer.
Right? The rent.
A sense that the city bureaucracy and the city infrastructure and maybe the people that are here, they don't care if you're here or not. You're anonymous, I guess, in a sense, and the police officer doesn't care. He's just doing his job. If you are on the wrong side of the law, he's not going to listen to you. I do have a car in the city, and the New York City is really brutal on people who have a car. It's not set up for that. So you run into traffic and, again, police officers who are just trying to give out as many tickets as they can. But I feel like there could be a sense of coldness, a harsh sort of reality that, you're here, but I don't care. There's not a lot of, I think, warmth from most people. But that doesn't mean that you're not. We have a delivery guy here at the studio who he's been coming to. We've moved locations a number of times. He's been coming here for 20 years or more, and he's a man probably in his 60s, I'm guessing, maybe 70s. Even in hot weather, he comes fully dressed with a scarf, like a cravat or something. It's not a tie, it's not a bow tie, but it's some kind of neck adornment, and he comes in and he's very warm and friendly. But I think there is a certain amount of indifference to your existence, your particular, life will go on when you're gone, and let's just get you out of here right now.
For question number 3, I gave these 6 New Yorkers a challenge. If you were supreme leader of New York, you were Kim Jong-un of New York, and you could pass any executive order you wanted, no matter how ridiculous.
What would I...
to give you some inspiration, Kim Jong-un, he just made a law that said sarcasm is illegal.
No way.
Yeah, he did. So
I heard of spitting being illegal if you get or jaywalking.
And chewing gum in Singapore is illegal. So no, anything you want, anything.
No, honestly, I think the commuting. I think I'll make like the trains free, like just accessible. You know what I mean? Like
that's one of the things I think is quite cheap here.
They're cheap, but it should just be accessible,
And the ferry to Staten Island is free.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'll do that. That'd be a big help, you know what I mean? People would just save a lot of money and get to work, and you know what I mean?
And lower rent.
Lower. Yeah. Yeah. But that's impossible here. It's so like it's like a mecca, you know what I mean? So many people come here, so they raise the rent because of that. Like it's not, I don't know, it's not easy to live here. It's a little expensive, yeah.
Great question.
This is Fran, the music producer.
I think the first thing I would do is implement a plan to do on the east side of Manhattan what they've done on the west side, which is essentially allowing much more foot traffic, more green space on the east side. And on the west side, they've connected bike and hiking trails all the way from Lower Manhattan all the way up to the George Washington Bridge. So it's 13 miles or so of paths that the citizens can enjoy. It's by water. People always love to be next to the water, and the east side is essentially it's cut up, so you can't really you couldn't bike all the way from the bottom to the top without going around into some streets. So maybe to beautify and kind of make that something for pedestrians and the citizens to go and enjoy the East River. There are a lot of good ones that have been passed that have changed since I was here originally, which is, you're not allowed to smoke in the bars now. That happened about 10 or 12 years ago.
Yeah. All over the Western world.
Yeah. And I think that I like that one. I knew I had friends who didn't even smoke, who didn't like it, and thought it was restricting their freedom or whatever. But it's great to clean up the air. not to smell like that if you go in a bar for an hour and you come out and it's like you have to wash your clothes for sure. I love not washing my clothes. I don't want to wash my clothes tomorrow. I have to if you go to a bar and you hang out with a few friends. So that one's done already. Another one is the emphasis on these city bikes. I think that's a great idea, and promoting those alternate forms of transportation. Hey, let's be able to get around quicker without hopping in a car or even in the subway. So those are done already. So
first executive order of New York, let's see. I would say my first executive order would be to get rid of all the Trump buildings and to get Trump out of New York, when he comes. Wouldn't allow him in New York. That would be the number one thing. Deny his residency, get him out.
Okay, the first executive order would be to get rid of the big real estate characters and make everything into co-ops, or make it possible for people to own their own apartments, and basically just bring down the rent for everybody in New York. That would be the first thing, so that people could actually live off their salary, because most people can't even afford to live from working full-time jobs.
Brian agrees with Cecilia.
Every building must have real affordable housing that is, at least half of it has to be a quarter of someone's monthly take-home salary.
Raphael mentioned the thing about banning Trump from New York, but he's got a bit more to add.
It's interesting. How we were talking about what makes New York so special, and I think what's really cool about New York is that I feel like New York is like a country inside of a country. New York can be very liberal, very open. It's definitely very different than the South, or Middle America, the Bible Belt. Which I'm sure you experienced,
Yeah, I've been traveling to a lot of that, and actually when I was in Memphis and I was heading towards Alabama, my Airbnb host said, "No, don't go there. You don't want to go there." But yeah, I want to see that too.
No, it's I would want to see it too, but it's interesting. We're definitely a different, very different than the rest of the United States. New York is. I remember during the primaries when Barack Obama was up against Hillary Clinton, and I remember we were sitting at a restaurant, and I was talking, to a friend of mine there, and I guess, people overheard us talking, that obviously they saw that we were both Democrats, and they gave us the meanest, dirtiest look. It was just like if we were nuts. So that's when I realized, wow, I'm not in New York anymore. So, but they're nice people. I mean, just because you have a different political view doesn't mean.
But I feel I've also seen that it's getting more and more divided, and yes. I've spoken to people here who say they actually unfriended someone yes. of their friends yes. because they were exposing their opinions, which yes. was very different from theirs.
Yeah, no, you're seeing a lot of that lately.
You got any Republican friends?
I do have some, and I have some that are a little bit more extreme than others. But I try to stay away from those conversations with them. But the few times that I do have those conversations, it's like it always ends up with let's agree to disagree.
Exactly.
So, but fortunately, you know what? I think I've been unfollowed on Facebook, maybe by a few people, but nothing significant that made me think of oh my God, this person, unfollowed me, So whatever, it doesn't really matter.
And for the last one to answer that question, we go back into the wind by the river.
My first law?
Where Bill has a drastic law that he'd like to pass.
Rape or child abuse, you would get tortured. Literally, in front of 42nd Street, the livest place ever, and you would be made an example of. That would be my first thing. Because I don't believe in that, rapists and child abuse or stuff like that. I would make an example out of them first so that everybody gets it clear that if they ever violate that law, there's no remorse for them at all. You understand? And that's about it, man.
In a few days, you'll get the second parts of The Humans of New York, the podcast.
You know what I'm saying?
Here, my panel will talk about their dreams
and stuff like that,
and where they would travel to if they could go anywhere they wanted.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
And then I'll reveal where I'm traveling to.
You know what I'm saying? Stuff like that, you know?
My name is Palabo. See you in a few days.
In a matter of a New York minute. You understand what I'm saying?